the small town of St. Martin. It was a picturesque and peaceful place where time seemed to move slowly. Located on the seafront, its narrow and winding streets were lined with simple houses, built with the charm of old coastal buildings. However, what really caught the attention of residents and the few tourists who visited the city was the imposing lighthouse which stood on top of a cliff, always facing the vast ocean. The lighthouse was not just a stone and glass structure, but a real symbol of hope and security for everyone who lived there. For years he had guided boats through the treacherous waters of the sea, guiding fishermen and sailors on their journeys. But the lighthouse has always had a much greater meaning than simply illuminating the path of navigators. He was a beacon of emotional comfort, a point of reference for all the city's inhabitants. In the darkest nights and violent storms, the lighthouse was the only thing residents could count on. Its luminous rays cut through the darkness and brought immediate relief to those who felt lost or lonely. For children, it was a fairy tale, a magical place where stories came from about a lighthouse that would never go out, no matter the odds. Despite its practical usefulness, the headlamp St. Martin, it was much more than a simple construction. He represented the constancy in a world full of changes. He was the silent promise that, even in the darkest hours, there would always be something to light the way, something that could spark the hope of those who needed it most. Over the years, technology has advanced and times have changed. Boats that previously depended on lighthouse light to find their way now navigated using modern GPS systems and sophisticated radars. The practical need for the old San Martin lighthouse gradually diminished, and as happens with so many things that were once indispensable, it ended up being left aside, forgotten by progress. The decision to deactivate the lighthouse was met with sadness by many city residents. For the older people, it was like erasing a living part of local history. Even so, over time, everyone got used to his absence. The lights stopped turning, the structure began to show signs of wear, and the lighthouse became just another reminder of a time that was long gone. However, something strange started to happen. On the darkest nights, when clouds covered the moon and silence took over the city, some residents swore they would see the lighthouse light come on, faint at first, like a forgotten but visible sigh, and on some occasions it became strong, firm, shining over the sea like in the old days. There was no electricity connected to the structure, nor recent maintenance. It was apparently impossible. But the light was there. Stories began to circulate quickly. Some said it was a hallucination. Others believed it was a miracle. And there were still those who mentioned an old legend, whispered in conversations in squares and bakeries, that the lighthouse carried a different energy, that it would never go out as long as there was someone with hope alive in their heart. And so the mystery of the rekindled light began to envelop the lighthouse in a new veil of curiosity and enchantment. Anna had arrived St. Martin just a few weeks ago, an ambitious, recently graduated journalist with a desire to make a difference. She found herself drawn to the calm of the city and the idea of uncovering hidden stories. She had been sent to write about the local traditions and customs of a city that seemed to have stopped in time, but when she arrived, she found something much more intriguing than simple chronicles of fishermen and street fairs. The lighthouse, deactivated for years, soon caught his attention. Stories about the light that still turned on in a mysterious way began to emerge in informal conversation. In the first few days, Anna laughed at these stories. After all, she was a skeptical journalist, used to seeking rational explanations for phenomena. But as the reports accumulated, she began to wonder. There was something magical about that place, something that could not be explained easily. Anna found herself increasingly fascinated by the lighthouse and the legend that surrounded it. She heard older residents talk about how light came on dark nights and how the lighthouse seemed to convey a sense of security and hope to everyone who saw him. It never goes out, they told her a few times. It was a story that intrigued her, especially because of its link to the faith and hopes of people. But what touched her deeply was the idea that, deep down, everyone there believed that something bigger was behind this light. Determined to understand the phenomenon, Anna thought about spending a night at the lighthouse. She knew that a story about this could be her big chance to do something really impactful. But beyond that, she felt that the answer to her own personal doubts could also be there. Who knows, the lighthouse could turn on its own internal light, the light of the hope that she had lost over the years. On the night scheduled for her investigation, Anna was determined to find the answer to the mystery of the lighthouse. Arming herself with a flashlight and a notepad, she climbed the creaky steps of the old structure, with a growing sense of apprehension. The sharp coastal wind beat against his skin, and the sound of the waves crashing against the rocks seemed more intense than ever. It was as if the sea was whispering ancient secrets, waiting for her to discover them. The lighthouse, although deactivated, still had a grandeur that seemed to defy time. The walls, covered in moss and saltpeter, told stories of days gone by, but as Anna approached the control room, a strange feeling came over her. Something about that place made her feel an inexplicable connection with the city's past and its residents. The silence that surrounded the lighthouse seemed profound, as if time had stagnated there, awaiting a purpose. She settled into the small control room, with a wide view of the dark, choppy sea. The few old pieces of furniture were covered in a layer of dust, but still maintained an aura of functionality. The lighthouse, now inactive, looked like the carcass of a sleeping giant, but something about its presence made her feel that there was still more behind the place than simple history. With each passing minute, the tension increased. Anna tried unsuccessfully to find some logical explanation for what the residents described. No light signal, no noticeable changes. She wondered if she had made a wrong choice in coming here. Maybe the lighthouse was just an old building, with nothing but fanciful stories. But something inside her told her she was about to discover the truth. Time seemed to drag by slowly, and the night at the lighthouse began to become a silent and almost dreamlike experience for Anna. The flashlight in her hand shook slightly, not out of fear, but from the feeling of being in a place where time seemed to not exist, where the past and the present blended together. The immense darkness of the sea before his eyes seemed to absorb the light from the lighthouse, as if it were an empty canvas waiting to be filled with something. The lighthouse, which once seemed like a solid and reliable fortress, now seemed like a relic, quiet and forgotten. Anna sat on a worn chair, trying to observe everything around her, but she felt there was nothing but an uncomfortable peace. The wind blew strongly against the windows, making the sound of the waves become more intensely present, like a distant melody. Every minute that passed seemed like an eternity. Anna looked at the sea, at the cloudy sky, but there was nothing extraordinary, nothing that explained the mysterious light that the residents always talked about. She began to doubt her decision to spend the night there. Maybe it was all just a legend, a story that people told to keep the memory of a glorious time alive. But she didn't want to believe it. She wanted to see, feel, understand. When her patience was beginning to run out and sleep seemed to weigh heavily on her eyes, Anna heard a soft but unmistakable sound. Footsteps, a slow, almost cautious step, coming from outside the control room. She stood up quickly, trying to contain her rising anxiety. Then the door opened, and a man entered. He wasn't in the history of her research, but his presence brought something comforting. Who would he be? And what did he know about the lighthouse? The man who entered the lighthouse room made no noise as he approached, but his immediate presence seemed to fill the space in an unexpected way. He was elderly, with a long gray beard and wearing a simple coat, but his posture was firm, as if the weight of years had not diminished his inner strength. His eyes, of a deep and tired tone, reflected an intensity that Anna had never seen in anyone. They were full of untold stories, as if time itself had left its mark there in that man's silent gaze. Anna was surprised, not knowing what to say. She expected to find only the emptiness of the structure, not the company of a stranger. The man didn't seem surprised to see her. He looked at her calmly, and in a manner that could only be described as serene, said, "Did you come looking for answers?" Joseph's words were soft but penetrating. Anna, still stunned, found the courage to respond. I wanted to understand what keeps that light burning. even after all these years. Jose smiled, a sad smile, as if he knew the question before it was even asked. He approached the lighthouse window and for a moment looked out to sea, where the waves were crashing against the rocks. The darkness was almost total, except for the distant glow of light, which, to Ana, began to seem less like an inexplicable phenomenon and more like a reflection of something deeper. The light never goes out because it doesn't depend on electricity or machines, he said in a deep voice. It depends on something more powerful. His eyes shone with distant knowledge, and Ana felt something was about to be revealed, something that could change the way she saw the world. Jose remained silent for a few seconds, as if he was pondering the best way to convey what he knew. The sound of the waves crashing against the rocks and the wind that whistled through the cracks in the lighthouse created an almost magical atmosphere, making the moment even more intense. Ana watched him, trying to understand what he meant. There was something deep and mysterious about his posture, something that made his words seem to carry a weight of wisdom beyond common understanding. Finally, Jose turned to her and, with a slight expression of someone sharing a secret, began to speak. The light. It never goes out because it doesn't depend on electricity or any technology. It's not a machine that keeps it on. He paused, as if preparing to reveal something that could change the way Ana saw the world. It depends on something much more powerful. It depends on faith, the faith of those who still believe. Ana frowned, confused. Faith? What do you mean? What does this have to do with the lighthouse? Jose smiled in a calm, contemplative manner, and his eyes shone with a distant memory, as if he were accessing a part of his life that had already been forgotten. The lighthouse is not just a structure of stone and glass. It is a reflection of our hopes and desires, something deeper than any logical explanation. When someone believes that something can change, that they can find a way, the light goes on. But when everyone loses hope, it goes out. Ana felt a shiver. Jose's words seemed to touch a part of her soul that she didn't even know existed. At one point, she found herself reflecting on her own life, on the losses and frustrations she carried. The feeling that the light of the lighthouse was more connected to her own lost faith enveloped her. She didn't know it yet, but the answers she was looking for were closer than she ever imagined. Jose's words echoed in Ana's mind like a distant melody that repeated itself, without ceasing to be unsettling. She was there in front of a man who apparently knew more about lighthouse light than anyone else. He wasn't talking about wires, circuits, or any technical explanation. He was talking about faith, about hope, and about something much deeper and more invisible than she had ever considered. As she watched Jose, Ana felt a wave of confusion mixed with something else, a sense of recognition, as if for an instant she had glimpsed the truth she was looking for, but didn't know exactly how to reach it. How could a simple lighthouse, a building of stone and glass, have anything to do with people's faith? And what did that mean to her? She remembered her own life, the losses she had suffered, the frustration with her career that didn't seem to take off, the loneliness that accompanied her at every step. As a journalist, she always believed that the answers lay in something tangible, something that could be explained and proven. But now, in front of the lighthouse and Jose, she began to question everything. Could it be that the true light was somewhere beyond logic and reason? Ana sat down, her mind feeling cloudy. She thought about the last time she really had faith in something, not just in her work, but in herself, in her own abilities. It had been so long since she fully believed in anything. The loss of a great love, the failure of old dreams, the feeling of being trapped in a cycle with no way out. The lighthouse, with its silent, persistent light, seemed like a reflection of her own search for something greater, something that would make her believe again. She wondered if she could still turn on her own inner light, if, like the lighthouse, I could find hope in the midst of darkness. Jose remained standing, looking at the rough sea, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon, as if he saw something beyond the waters and the darkness. Ana, in turn, was immersed in the words he had just said. Faith, she now understood, was the fuel of the lighthouse. But there was more to be said. Jose seemed to be just beginning to explain. When he slowly turned to her, his expression was calmer, as if he knew exactly what she needed to hear to understand what was happening. "You ask why the light only appears at night," he began, his voice soft, as if sharing an ancient secret. "The answer lies in the very nature of light and darkness. During the day, the world is full of distractions. Sunlight overshadows the small lights, the ones that really matter. When the day passes and darkness takes over, the true light reveals itself. It is not just any light, but the light of hope, of faith in something that is beyond the visible." Anna looked at him, absorbing his words, but still not fully understanding. Jose continued, as if he was guiding her along a path of deeper understanding. "At night, when the world is silent and darkness envelops everything around them, people find themselves within themselves. They are more open to seeing what really matters. The lighthouse, then, is not just a physical light. It is a symbol. It shines for those who still have faith, who still believe that, despite the darkness, something greater can light the way." Those words hit Anna unexpectedly. She felt a rush of clarity, as if, for the first time in a long time, something had clicked into place in her life. The true light, she thought. It is not the one that shines brightly during the day, but the one that appears in the darkest moments, when the heart is ready to believe again. The next day, Anna woke up early, but the feeling of serenity that she had experienced during the night at the lighthouse still enveloped her. She got up, looked out her bedroom window, and saw the calm sea reflecting the soft morning light. But in the back of her mind, she knew something inside her had changed. Jose's words about the light that never goes out and about the faith that keeps the lighthouse lit still reverberated in his thoughts. She knew she needed to write about it, but not in the way she had initially imagined. It was no longer a story about an inexplicable phenomenon or a legend of a coastal town. Now she wanted to share something much deeper. I wanted to write about what the lighthouse represented, not just for San Martin, but for anyone who was lost in the darkness of life. I wanted to tell everyone that, even in the most difficult times, there would always be something, someone, or an inner light capable of guiding them. As she prepared to write, a feeling of clarity came over her. She was no longer looking for external answers, but internal ones. Anna remembered the losses she had faced, the dreams that seemed unattainable, and the doubts that haunted her. For so long, she had sought security in rational answers, in logic, but now she understood that true light came from silent faith, the ability to believe in something beyond the visible, beyond control. The moment she started typing the first words of the article, something curious happened. Outside, the lighthouse turned on, shining brighter than ever, as if responding to its own internal journey. Anna smiled as she realized that, somehow, the lighthouse never actually went out. He simply hoped she was ready to see its light.